Hi, I hope you enjoyed the first reading on property, plant, and equipment, and I hope you gave the exam the five questions that I had for you guys. Well, let's move on to the first learning outcome statement of reading number two. What do we mean by recognition and recognition principle? We discussed what do we mean by recognition. Recognition means it specifies the timing when do we need to recognize a particular transaction in the books of accounts. Now, let's use the terminology, let's leverage our understanding in respect of property, plant, and equipment. So, always remember if the following conditions, all of them, are satisfied, then in such a case, we need to recognize property, plant, and equipment in the books of accounts. The first thing is if it is probable that the future economic benefit associated with the asset will flow to the entity and the cost can be reliably measured. Now, this is an asset, meets the definition of property, plant, and equipment. Now comes the recognition principle. When do we need to recognize this property in the books of accounts? If these two conditions are satisfied, then we need to recognize the transaction as a PP&E. The first is if it is probable that the future economic benefit associated with the asset will flow to the entity and the cost can be reliably measured. Now, I have highlighted three major things that we need to go through. The first thing is it's really important that you need to understand this recognition principle because it is going to help you later in the course, later in understanding the IAS 16 standards. Second point is what do we mean by the term called probable? The term probable means more likely than not. That is, it should be more than 50%. More likely than not. The chances of happening should be more than the chances of not happening. Then the future economic benefit. Now, what do we mean by future economic benefit? It means that it is in terms of either a revenue generation or either in terms of cost savings. It can be a revenue generator or it can be a cost saver, but it has to provide an economic benefit to the entity. The third point is the cost can be reliably measured. Now, why we are saying that the cost is important and we need to recognize and we need to reliably measure the cost because for the first time when we recognize any asset in the books of accounts it has to be recognized at cost. Generally, I'm not saying always. Someone may say that some of the financial instruments have one day gain or loss. I'm not going into that detail. I am saying that in generally the first time the asset is recognized at the cost. Now it is really important for us to determine the cost of the asset. Hence, if both the conditions are satisfied, then we need to recognize the property, plant, and equipment in the books of accounts. It only deals with the timing. When do we need to recognize this PP&E? See the level of filtering. First, we discuss about the definition of property, plant, and equipment. Then we scoped out few of them from our listing. Then we have the net PP&E after scoped out. Then we have recognition principle. If the recognition principles are met, then we need to recognize PP&E in the books of accounts.